So I'm Bradley Treadaway. I'm visiting from Brooklyn by way of the American Southeast. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, and I grew up in Tennessee and Louisiana. And so, you know, I'm kind of tried and true Southern boy, and you know, I was born in 1977, and you know, I'm a child of the 80s in that regard. And I think sort of at that point, really, before like the web opened up access and information, you know, the way you could kind of intersect with international cultures was a lot more limited and more difficult. And I think, you know, as a child, like my outlet for that was really sort of limited to like issues of National Geographic, which were pretty fascinating for me, and really certainly sparked some curiosity in like different cultural intersections, but also it kind of woke me up to the power of image making and photography, and certainly those two things kind of guided a lot of my early stages and my first forays into art making and creativity. You know, I kind of realized through those moments that perhaps my cultural exposure was somewhat limited. And I kind of took it upon myself to find ways to broaden those horizons. And so, you know, it was kind of voracious reading and looking at pictures. And as I went into high school, you know, I started to really think about opportunities and methods to kind of explore something else, you know. The Southeast, certainly at that time, was really not like the most like culturally broad-based or open-minded, and I kind of recognized that there was something beyond what I could see in front of me that could inform who I am by looking at other experiences. And so, you know, as I went through high school, I started working like pretty much full-time jobs and putting money away, and you know, as a graduation present to myself, I got a plane ticket and I went to Europe, and you know, I kind of did that sort of that rite of passage of moving through countries at like rapid paces, and really just kind of understanding, kind of getting that first taste of how another culture, another society, another sort of governmental construct could operate. And you know, it's really informative to me, not only to kind of see what's outside of your own circumstances and exposure, but I think it's like that point of comparison. You know, when you step into another culture, it forces you to kind of look back on yourself and how you operate in your own way. And I think for me, what that really led to was kind of just broadening the possibilities and understanding that the way I was looking at things wasn't the only way to go about it. And so I took that experience in Europe to college with me and really started thinking about ways that I could travel internationally and really utilizing photography as kind of a partner to that process. As a junior in college, I applied for a study abroad program called Semester at Sea, and it was run through the University of Virginia, or no, University of Pittsburgh at the time. I think it's run through the University of Virginia now. But the premise is basically that you get on a steamship for 4 months and you sail around the world, and that was a real eye-opener for me. And I think, you know, you step into a European culture, you're certainly going to experience some pretty dramatic differences, but by and large, you know, the West and the U.S. have kind of risen from those foundations. So to step into places like Cuba and South Africa and India and Vietnam and Malaysia, this really like forced me fully outside of my comfort zone and helped me kind of look back on myself and the way I was doing things in a much different, and I think probably a more objective way. It helped me kind of analyze what I was thinking about, the way I was working as an artist, and modify that stuff. You know? So these travels were heavily accompanied with the use of photography, and you know, I kind of wanted to be this cultural explorer about the world with my camera, and by all means I did that. You know, the Semester at Sea program was kind of a whirlwind. You'd hit these countries for like 5 or 6 days, and it was a really good taste and introduction. But, you know, the substance for me and the depth of that kind of experience was limited. And, you know, throughout that experience, I really took an interest in Indian culture, Indian history, Indian religion, and chose to go back. And so I came back from Semester at Sea. I finished my undergraduate studies, and again, I kind of put everything on hold, saved my money as intently as I could. I worked for a year in a coffee shop, kind of twiddling my thumbs, and finally I had pretty much sold everything I had. I bought a new and better camera and a plane ticket, and I went to India for 5 months, and I walked around and traveled and explored the culture and spoke to as many people as I could. I photographed extensively, but increasingly more carefully. Because I stepped into India, I started to really feel my presence as a Westerner in like a foreign land, and how that could affect the circumstances around me. And it started to kind of slow my photographic process down. I became more selective. I became not hesitant, but I just chose not to photograph in certain moments and certain subjects out of respect or deference, and trying not to really sort of be like that ugly American that sort of surrounds the idea of travel oftentimes. I took those rolls of film back to Louisiana as I started graduate school. I processed and printed that work and had an exhibition wherein I sold a few photographs on that opening night. And it was a really, I sold it for like $300 a piece, which for me was like, I mean, that's a lot of money. You know, I guess it's still a decent amount of money. But I started to think about what that $600 I made that night would mean to the subjects who I was photographing. And in particular, I sold the two photographs I sold were of a person who I spent a lot of time with. It was a father and child photograph. And I really started to think about how far that $600 could go for this infant pictured in my photograph. And, it became really problematic for me. You know, I really had kind of an ill feeling about not being able to kind of complete this exchange, because it felt kind of, I think parasitic is a little too aggressive of a word, but certainly it was like a little selfish and self-serving. This was a huge identity crisis for me as a person, as an artist, because, you know, from really childhood, I was thinking about being an international traveler as really kind of the foundation of who I wanted to be as a person, and thereby an artist. And it became really difficult to think about that kind of picture making and that kind of work. And in fact, I mean, the conflict was so great for me that I really spent about a year and a half with a complete identity crisis in graduate school, having no idea how to shift my vision. And, you know, ultimately, after a lot of struggle and uncertainty, I think I came to the conclusion that I should be making work about what I know. And what I know is in my own backyard. And so I started to kind of translate some of the research and thought process that I was applying to these international studies of travel, and I started thinking about how I could work with this in my own cultural heritage, my own family history, and started to kind of turn inward to my work and inspiration. All of that was kind of coinciding with a long-standing friendship and collaborative work with Justin Thompson and Frankie, this guy. Oh. I don't want to talk like you're not in the room. and graduate school was kind of like this really up in the air moment for me. As the cards started to fall, Justin and I recognized the importance of extending our collaboration. And I guess I should just take one step back to say that as a graduate student, I applied for 2 Fulbrights to go to India to kind of continue this body of work. And the application was sort of unrefined and lacking in a lot of ways that I was kind of too young to know about at the time. And those applications were luckily rejected. You know, I certainly wouldn't have said that then, but now, I mean, that hardship is what kind of puts me in this spot today. And it also led me to kind of rethink my approach, you know. So Justin and I started to find ways to craft a proposal that would reintegrate a collaboration for us, and also kind of be very specific about the needs to be in Italy. And so the Fulbright, my 3rd Fulbright proposal, which was successful this time, was based kind of on like intergenerational communication and traditional trades in Italy that were in danger of becoming extinct due to like technological advances. And so, you know, for the next year, as I was successful in this application, Justin and I spent a great deal of time kind of looking through archival material and formulating ideas and artwork about these traditional trades and how, in fact, they were sort of being pushed under into sort of non-existence due to the technology. And we created a year of work that kind of built on that idea. You know, for me, that shift of kind of taking it away from home was still also was like parallel to me developing more of the ideas I was dealing with at home, because some 3 days or so before I went to Italy to start the Fulbright, Hurricane Katrina hit, and you know, it was a really difficult time to sort of decide to. Actually, at that point, really, my mother sort of decided. She was like, it's one of the few times I've heard my mom curse in my entire life. "You getting on that damn plane?" She would, because I wanted to stick around and ensure the safety of my family, which was unaccounted for. So really like a conflicting time. But my mother sort of pushed me along, and that kind of let me from afar sort of contend with some of these issues. Kind of found like working back to the archive that I was dealing with in Italy, started to create some parallels to an exploration of that archive at home. And you know, that sort of led a good bit of my work of the last decade, some of which you guys may see on Thursday afternoon or evening. You know, that Fulbright experience, though, kind of stepping out, again, like, allowed me to sort of look back at home and be more analytical and kind of see myself outside of my own shoes and give me a more clear set of perspectives. This notion continues. I'm in fact in the throes of a Fulbright application again right now, and hopefully this one will be successful. You know, these moments are really critical. They're very difficult. I think what Lewis mentioned, this notion of like, you've got to figure out ways to do it is really critical. You've got to not be dependent necessarily on these resources to find your ideas and to own your motivation. You have to allow those things to catalyze those things, to put them into work. You know, so it's never really an easy path to kind of step out into these realms. The paperwork is super intense. I mean, if you've applied to, well, if you've all had a college application, and maybe a graduate application, you know, something like the Fulbright is maybe twice the paperwork, twice the intensity. And, you know, it's something that as a graduate student, I forced myself through 3 times. And, you know, hoping that this time as a scholar will be a successful one. But it's not an easy road to kind of pass through that, and it's something that you just have to find your motivation after work, at night, burning the midnight oil, typing away